Southwest Topeka has a good neighbor. State Farm agent Jim Garrison, now at 29th and Urish. If your current insurance situation has you going around in circles, get off the roundabout and stop in and meet Jim and his wonderfully efficient staff. Let Jim Garrison give you a quote and make the Garrison comparison. He's confident that with State Farm's competitive rates, the right coverage, and his unmatched service, you'll want to make him your new insurance agent. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there, and Jim Garrison is there for you, northeast of the roundabout at 29th and Urish.
When someone has a passion for what they do, it comes through in the product they provide their customers. Just ask LaRocco's Pizza's new owner, Jason Johnson, about their crust. They make it every day and let it rise for a minimum of 24 hours before they use it for their pizza. And his staff doesn't want to do anything they won't be the best at, and you can taste it in their pizza. LaRocco's Pizza, just a half block north of the I-470 and Gage Boulevard exit. Come taste the difference.
It's time for Real Estate 101 with the Carrie Brown team from Preferred Advisors.
Good Saturday morning to you. This is Carrie Brown, Associate Broker with eXp Realty and the Preferred Advisors team, and you're listening to Real Estate 101. I am back with my co-host for the month, Bill Exeter. He owns the Exeter Group. He is the guru of all 1031 exchanges. So, good morning, Bill. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine. How are you doing?
Doing good. And obviously you do more than 1031 exchanges, so we should probably plug that real quick. What all do you do?
Part of the family includes a trust company. So Exeter Trust Company serves as custodian for self-directed IRAs. So investors can roll the IRA over to us and use their IRA to buy all sorts of real estate-related assets, so actually real estate or mortgages, deeds of trust, tax lien certificates, partnership interests, things like that. We do land trusts, or some people call it title holding trusts, where they want to hold real estate in a trust for confidentiality and privacy of ownership. We do general custody services, so folks that want an account where they hold the assets, do the accounting, record keeping, tracking of the assets, they can use us for that. And then we do specialized escrows, so when a title company or an escrow company can't necessarily do an escrow because of their regulatory environment, usually it's kind of a cash holding or asset holding or specialty holding escrow, then we can certainly take a look at that. We don't want to compete with title and escrow, but when they can't do something, we can take a look at it.
So there you go. That's what all he does.
That's the 30-second elevator spiel.
Very good. So this week we're going to be talking about 1031 exchanges when it comes to seasonal rentals, VRBOs, Airbnb, short-term rentals, and some tax extensions. So I don't know if you guys know about it, but here in Topeka, I've got several friends that have some VRBOs, and they do really well with them. And some Airbnbs. So if you've ever thought about that, you don't want to do the monthly rentals anymore because everybody knows sometimes that can be a little bit of a headache. But you still have this property and you think, okay, this would be really good for an Airbnb or a VRBO. Definitely look into it because those are types of rentals where the purchaser or the person coming in, they're paying up front and they're rated. So if they tear up your place and you give them a bad review, it's going to be really hard for them to rent another one. So people that do them, and they do them very often, they don't want that bad review. So it's a really good way of making money without the headache year-round. So plugging that in there, if you want to buy any, be sure and give me a call. But let's talk about how that affects you in a 1031 exchange.
Sure, and it's a good topic, good question, because a lot of people kind of assume that it doesn't qualify for 1031 exchange treatment because it's very short term, a couple days, weekend, what have you. But it actually does. I mean, it's considered rental property, just like any other rental property, except it's either just a couple days here and there or seasonal, etc. And it's still considered rental property or property held for investment, and it probably also falls into the third category, which is business use. You're kind of operating a business there. So it really satisfies all of the requirements for 1031 exchange treatment. And we're seeing more and more clients who exchange into property with the intent to use it for any type of short-term or seasonal rental.
And there's so many perks to it. So a friend of mine, whenever she first did it, she said, "Do you think that there would be at least some traffic for it here in Topeka?" And I said, I don't know why there wouldn't be. All you can do is try, because she was done with doing the month-to-month rental. Twice of people tearing it up and putting $10,000 back into fixing up one. She decided to give it a try, and she stays booked. And granted, she's over by the lake, but at the same time, we get a ton of traffic for the legislation season, and then we also get it for, people coming to see the Evel Knievel Museum, Brown versus Board. So we have a lot going on here that, those of us that live here, we think, okay, well, we're not like a tropical destination, but we still have a lot of traffic coming in, and they sometimes need a little bit longer term than doing it at a hotel. So, and they like the amenities that come with the VRBOs and the Airbnbs. So definitely look into that, especially if you've got properties that you're just like, it would be centrally located, perfect for that, good neighborhoods, things along those lines. So like you said, it's a business. So most people don't even think about that being a business. But there are so many reasons why it is. I mean, obviously, it's a second income.
Absolutely. We're even hearing more and more clients talk about that because of the coronavirus, where they're saying people are very hesitant to go to a hotel, but with this type of seasonal or VRBO rental type activity, it's a separate house or cottage or what have you, and so there's a lot less chance you're going to be, walking down the hall and getting exposed to other folks at a hotel.
Absolutely. And like I said, you have the different amenities that most of them have, like kitchenettes, so you can do your own cooking if you're nervous about those types of things. I was just with my friend that has one last night, and she was talking about people going to the extreme whenever it comes to trying to stay safe, which one of them apparently was a doctor that was here just for a special case for a week, and brought her own bedding, brought her own sponges and things like that. So even brought her own coffee maker.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's protecting yourself.
Absolutely. And she thought, maybe I should do more in the way of making sure that everybody knows that these linens are cleaned every day and things along those lines, because you just never know. Okay, so tax extensions. I understand that there are quite a few.
There are quite a few extensions across the board. Those that affect 1031 exchanges were different this time. It's not what we had hoped for. It wasn't the best case scenario, but it was something. So I probably should go back. Historically, if there's a natural disaster, a fire, a flood, a tornado, a hurricane, what have you, the president will declare a natural disaster area, and then the U.S. Treasury will come out and grant extensions of time for various activities. And with the 1031 exchange world, that generally means they will add or extend your deadlines by 120 days. So your 45-day identification period or deadline would be 45 days plus 120. And your 180-day exchange deadline would be 180 days plus 120. And they didn't do that this time. And, it's unfortunate because we were hoping for more, but the challenge is we have a moving target today. So COVID-19 is not a geographic-specific event. It's affecting the entire globe. And it's not a date-specific event like a natural disaster. It's kind of the gift that keeps on giving. So I think they responded in a way that they thought would work, but it did give some people some relief. So what we do know for today is that if your 45-day identification deadline or your 180-day exchange deadline lands on or between April 1st or July 15th, your deadline is extended to July 15th. So if the deadline was early April, you got a fairly nice extension. If your deadline is, say, July 10th, then you're getting a 5-day extension. So, today, if you're closing on the sale of your property just beginning your 1031 exchange, the deadlines don't help you at all as of today. So we're hoping that we'll get some kind of a notice or extension from the service, but at this point, we haven't heard any rumblings, and we don't expect anything. So it just I think it kind of is what it is at this point.
Okay, so back to the VRBOs. I know a lot of folks, again, I was talking about here locally in the Topeka, Lawrence, Manhattan, surrounding areas. But for me personally, everybody asks me, well, if you were to invest, where would you invest? And I like to travel. And so I've always thought I like the ideas of buying in foreign countries, given that some of that is hard because most places don't necessarily allow it. But being able to buy those VRBOs in those areas, they obviously stay booked, and you don't really have to worry with it. Basically, everybody else is paying your mortgage. How does that affect you in a 1031 exchange?
There's a lot of mystery out there on the internet when it involves foreign property. A lot of brochures and websites and blogs and what have you will make statements like you can't exchange foreign property. And what they're really saying is you can't sell U.S. property and 1031 exchange into a foreign property. It's not considered like-kind property. And vice versa, you can't take a foreign asset that's a rental or investment property and sell that in exchange into U.S. property. But you can sell foreign rental, investment, or business use property and 1031 exchange into other foreign rental, investment, or business use property. So as long as it's foreign for foreign, it does qualify. So you could certainly go out and buy a VRBO in a foreign country, and then later when you sell that, it may or may not trigger a tax in that country. So you'd still have to look at the local country's laws and tax regulations and what have you. But it would also probably trigger a U.S. tax. And it's a complicated formula, but your accountant can sit down and determine whether there is going to be a U.S. tax consequence when you sell a foreign rental property. And if it does, you can 1031 exchange a foreign rental for another foreign rental and defer at least the U.S. tax consequences. It will not, of course, defer anything in the foreign country. In fact, I don't know of any country that has anything like a 1031 exchange. So it's a foreign concept to the foreign country. In fact, when we're doing these, we've done them in about 45 countries now, and when we're doing those, the first hurdle we have to overcome is that, no, it really is a legitimate U.S. tax code. It's not money laundering or anything like that. So once we get over that hurdle and show them it's a legitimate tax code in the U.S., and there's a reason for doing that, then we're usually in pretty good shape, and we just have to worry about local closing customs and things like that. But it would give them at least a chance to defer the U.S. tax consequence.
So are there specific countries that you've found it to be more challenging?
Yes, there are some that just won't work. For example, China's one, where the requirements, the laws, the regulations, and local rulings and customs require that when you sell real estate in China, the funds have to be deposited into the actual client's bank account. There's no way for the transaction to get assigned to a 1031 exchange company, and there's no way for the money to be wired to a qualified intermediary for the 1031 exchange. It has to be deposited into the client's bank account. So that eliminates the ability to do a 1031 exchange. The other one that comes to mind offhand is Peru, same type of requirement. So there's a few countries like that kind of throw a monkey wrench into the whole thing, and there's just no way to do the 1031 exchange. There's other countries like Germany where you can still do it, but they have special requirements, and the way to work through those requirements is to set up a specialized trust to hold the funds, where the trust is under our control as the qualified intermediary, but it still accomplishes the 1031 exchange. So each one's got a little different nuance. You've got foreign currencies to worry about, things like that. But we're actually set up to receive and hold in 29 different foreign currencies so that we don't receive and convert to U.S. dollars. We actually hold in the foreign currency. That way it doesn't expose the client to any foreign currency risk. So that's kind of a quick nutshell. It gets a little more complicated, a little more confusing. You have to deal with the local laws and customs and closing processes.
At EXP, we're pretty lucky because we also have a company inside of our company that handles all the foreign exchange currencies too. I know I have a client that moved to Cozumel, and they found whenever they got down there that they could not purchase. They didn't do any homework before they moved, but you have to have a minimum of $180,000 in your bank account on top of what you're going to use to purchase with, to show that you're going to stick around and that you're not just, buying a property and then leaving, which I thought was interesting.
That is interesting. Cozumel is one of my favorite places. Good people, good food, and great scuba diving.
I agree. At this point, we've dove probably 50 different places, and by far, still, Cozumel ranks number one. We're headed for Bonaire next, so that might get bumped, but right now, Cozumel has the best diving.
Yeah, I totally agree. Bonaire and probably Palau, I think, would be my number 2 and 3. I'm not sure which would be number 2, but those are pretty close.
We're going to take a quick break from a word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back to talk more about 1031 exchanges.
It's the season for brand new mulch, and Brown's Tree Service has got your yard covered. Brown's Tree Service utilizes hardwood mulch that retains more moisture. Not only does mulch make your yard more appealing, it also reduces weeds, improves soil, and creates insulation for plants. Get the right mulch for your job at Brown's Tree Service. They shred it, haul it, and spread it in bulk. Or you can haul it yourself for the personal touch to your property. Call Brown's Tree Service at 785-379-9212 or visit online at brownstreeservice.com.
When someone has a passion for what they do, it comes through in the product they provide their customers. Just ask LaRocco's Pizza's new owner, Jason Johnson, about their crust. They make it every day and let it rise for a minimum of 24 hours before they use it for their pizza. And his staff doesn't want to do anything they won't be the best at, and you can taste it in their pizza. LaRocco's Pizza, just a half block north of the I-470 and Gage Boulevard exit. Come taste the difference.
At SportsMomsUnited.com, we celebrate every athlete and support every sports mom. SportsMomsUnited.com is on a mission to put logic back in youth sports. When you ask young athletes why they play sports, their number one answer is fun. For them, that means being on a team, making new friends, having a good time, all of which are awesome memories. We add to the memories by featuring an athlete of the day and sharing their story. Nominate an athlete today at www.sportsmomsunited.com.
Thanks for joining us again. This is Carrie Brown, Associate Broker with eXp Realty and the Preferred Advisors team, and you're listening to Real Estate 101, and I'm back with my co-host for the month, Bill Exeter, with the Exeter Group. Before the break, we were talking about some of the more difficult places around the globe to buy and exchange in a 1031 exchange. So let's talk about the smoothest places.
We probably did that backwards, didn't we?
We did. We start hard. We go easy.
So the smoothest, which also is probably the least risky in terms of putting everything together and all the moving parts, is a concurrent 1031 exchange, where the sale of the relinquished property and the purchase of the replacement property all close on exactly the same day. It's just boom, boom, done. It's difficult to do in today's world just because of all the parties involved and the lending and all the moving parts. It's hard to get everyone, lined up and ready to close on the same day. But those will be typically the smoothest because it just kind of all happens and it closes. And then you've closed on both your sale and your purchase, so there's no worry about, will I find replacement property? Do I have to identify anything during the 45-day window? I mean, it's just done. And so that's probably the smoothest that you'll see out there.
So those would be like Guam, the U.S. Virgin Islands, because they're still part of the United States?
Yeah, in fact, that's a good point because a lot of people think that Puerto Rico is part of the U.S., which it is as a territory, but the legal definition of Puerto Rico is different. So Puerto Rico is not considered U.S. property for 1031 exchange treatment, but Guam would be, the U.S. Virgin Islands would be, and the Marianas Islands. So those are three that people would never really think of, but you can 1031 exchange out of any U.S. property into those three territories as well. And in a lot of cases, if we can just get it all set up in advance, it could be a nice, smooth transaction. And probably the bread and butter, if you will, which kind of would help kind of walk everyone through the mechanical steps of it, is you get someone who somehow acquires a single-family house. In a lot of cases, it's something where you bought a house, it's your home, it's your primary residence, and then you move, and you decide, well, rather than selling the house, you convert it to a rental property, and you rent it for maybe 5 years. And then you think, I really like this. I enjoy managing rental property, but I'm ready for a duplex or a fourplex. I want more units. I want to trade up. And then, of course, you meet with your accountant, and you get that wonderful news that if you just sell the single-family house, you're going to get killed with taxes on the capital gain and depreciation recapture. So then, of course, the next topic is, well, you can avoid that by doing the 1031 exchange. And so that really is a perfect example of the bread and butter transaction that is the most common, is then you sell the single family, do a 1031 exchange, and then acquire or exchange into that duplex or that fourplex. So now you've got 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 units instead of just one. You've diversified your investment. You've got more tenants, better cash flow, and really that's a perfect example of what you would want to use the 1031 for. It puts you in a better position, it's increasing your cash flow, ultimately it's increasing your net worth, and so it's kind of the bread, butter, basic transaction you see all the time is a nice, simple, single family for trading up into like a duplex or fourplex.
And by the way, through the NCE group, I have several guys that are looking for rental properties with either an 8% up to a 10% cap rate. So if you're wanting to unload some things and then buy a larger complex, or if you've got a larger complex and you're wanting to go into commercial, any of that, we have stuff literally all over the country. And I've also got a guy that's looking for properties with 100 units or more all over the place. So if you've got that or know of someone who does, be sure and have them reach out. My number is 785-213-5188. But obviously, this is a great time to be doing it. A lot of investors are thinking about doing something a little bit different.
And you certainly get folks that get close to or into retirement, and maybe they have a multifamily property, and they get really tired of, I don't know if you've heard this in your area, but we get it out here in seminars a lot, where they call it the terrible T's, the tenants, tax, trash, toilets, teenagers, toddlers, etc.
Oh, wow.
and they go, I'm just done with this. I want something different. I want something with less property management headaches. I want to retire and enjoy it and get cash flow. A lot of them just think, I'm going to sell and cash out. And again, they meet with their accountant and find out how bad it's going to be. So then they're looking for something to exchange into. So you may get people, too, who kind of do the opposite. The example I just gave is kind of a diversification strategy where they sell a single family, buy a duplex or fourplex. So you're diversifying. Instead of a duplex or fourplex, you could buy 2 or 3 or 4 single families, too. But then you get the opposite, where people have a lot of single families or multifamily, and they go, I'm just tired of all the tenants. So they may sell that, and maybe they exchange into like storage facilities, or you mentioned commercial, so office, retail, industrial, warehouse, what have you. Something that has a lot less property management and headaches involved with it, but at least allows them to stay invested so they don't get killed on taxes.
Absolutely. I know in Manhattan, I have roughly 148 doors listed right now. And this is a conglomeration of several investors that have been investing since they were in their early teens or inherited some. And now they're at retirement age, and they're like, I have other things I want to do. I have one client that wants to get his law degree. And he's like, I can't do that if my phone never stops ringing. And so obviously they're wanting to start moving towards, land for energy and, mobile home parks, which are what in our world we call mailbox money, because you technically don't own the asset sitting on the ground. You just own the ground. So if you've got any of that or are interested, be sure and give me a call. But that's exactly what you're talking about. They're just like, listen, there's other things I want to do in life. And so now I want to scale it down, but I have to keep something, because you can't just, cash in on $28 million worth of property and be like, no, Mr. IRS man, you can't have any of this cash.
Yeah. It is amazing how much that tax cut will, or tax hit, I guess, will affect you. It's amazing when they sit down with an accountant and they don't really, I haven't really thought about it until they see the number in black and white, and it's scary. It's a big number.
It is very scary. But, obviously, again, you can move that into other things like mailbox money, your trailer parks, and land and things like that. So there are definitely options out there. You don't always have to have that tenant. You could have someone, taking care of the crop for you. So definitely think about that.
Absolutely. It's a great way to reposition the portfolio as you get closer to retirement or whatever your goals and objectives are. As you get closer to your next goal, your current portfolio may not be exactly what you want or need. So it's a great way to reposition without getting hit with taxes. And, especially folks that are even older than, getting toward the end of their retirement where they're like, I'm not sure what my kids want. That's a good time to sit down with the kids and, ask them point blank, what would you like to inherit? And then it gives them a chance to reposition the portfolio, getting ready for the wealth transfer to the kids. Absolutely.
I have a winery up north near Ozaki listed, and they have children, and the children are like, listen, we're just not interested. That's not our path. That's not what we want to do. And so now they're looking at it saying, you know what, we're getting older. We want to travel. He wants to fix his cars. He's got all these collectibles that he just wants to fix up. And so he's ready to let go of the vineyard. And it's a fully functioning winery. By the way, if you'd like to buy one, give me a call. But they... you get to that point, it's like people in their heirlooms even, their kids don't want them, even though you've been collecting them for generation after generation. So holding on for children or successors that you think are going to want it may not really be the case.
Especially nowadays, there's a lot of folks in the next generation who really don't want the real estate. And so you referred to kind of mailbox management. That may be a solution where you exchange into something that's kind of mailbox management where you don't get killed with taxes, but at least the kids can inherit something that produces cash flow that they don't really have to manage that much.
Absolutely. Like last week, we were talking about farms. If you're buying a bulk of land and you're, leasing it out to a farmer that's pulling in crops, and how you can make that worth more whenever you pass it down, the kids can choose to just continue to get that mailbox money because, the farmer's typically taking care of all of it, depending on how you negotiate it. There are so many different options.
And going back to the winery real quick, I just kind of thought of a funny comment or strange comment, I guess, but a lot of people don't realize that the vines are actually considered real estate as long as they're still planted. So when you sell the winery, they're also selling the vines as part of the real estate. If the vines are not planted, then it's not considered real property. Just throw that in there.
Which is really interesting because it's a plant.
Yep.
But it's a plant that doesn't really start producing until about 3 years. So it is real estate.
Too funny. Same for timberland and things like that. If the trees are still planted and attached and they haven't cut the timber yet, it's considered real estate. If they cut the timber, then it's no longer real estate.
What about crops?
Crops, same thing. Typically, if you're selling the land plus the plants or trees or whatever it might be, that would be considered real estate. When the crops are actually harvested, then that would be considered what they call personal property or non-real estate.
All right, we are already to the end of the show. Bill, do you want to tell them how to get a hold of you?
Sure. They can give me a call at area code 619-239-3091. Again, that's 619-239-3091. Or go to our website at Exeter1031.com. So that's EXETER 1031.com.
And if you're looking to buy or sell, be sure and give me a call at 785-213-5188 or check out our website. You can either go to TopekaHomeAdvisors.com or or PreferredAdvisorsTeam.com. Again, 785-213-5188. Thanks for listening to Real Estate 101.
Thank you for listening to Real Estate 101 with the Carrie Brown team from Preferred Advisors.